talk about Automa, the Terraforming Mars new solo expansion that lets you play the game a little closer to where it is in 2-player. And I'm just going to go over how to play. If I have time, I'll cover the additional rulebooks, which is one for corporations and another for expansions. Yeah, so let's begin. So let's start, the components, and there's really not that many that you care about of all the ones shown here. The main one is these 6 Mars spot boards. One for each map, so you play whichever map you're playing. And then the second thing is the bonus cards. So these are basically special actions the Mars spot can take. Everything else is pretty much a reference card except this Venus track, which is just like one of these but for Venus, and you play it if you're playing Venus, and the Colonies, which I'll explain when we do the expansions. But yeah, everything else is pretty much a reference card or the special corporations designed for the Mars spot. Okay, so let's begin. So in terms of setup, so this is just for the base game, which we're going to do first. We'll get into expansions later or another video. But yeah, you take only the first 8 bonus cards. And this very complicated thing here, all that it says is that Mars spot's hand each generation is going to be 3 cards from the main project deck plus 1 from the bonus deck that I mentioned that has 8 cards. When this goes empty, you just shuffle this card pile and draw another one. Now, there's going to be a research phase after that. You alternate the first player, and there's going to be a research phase in which it's basically just buying cards. You can do it drafting or not drafting. If you don't draft, it's the same as the first hand. You just draw 4 cards for yourself, and then buy whatever you want. Marspot just draws 3 and 1 and doesn't pay for any. If you draft, you are going to draw 4 project cards for each. Draft them normally. You pick Marspot's cards at random, at least if you're not playing with corporations. And then you discard the last one that you send it, and you use the bonus card instead. I would not use drafting against Marspot. I feel it's too much of an advantage for the human player, because you're getting too much knowledge on its hand. Yeah, you're basically seeing half of Marspot's hand every time. So yeah, I would not do it for the corporations. It's a bit more interesting, but I would not do it for the other one. So basically, what I recommend is just not drafting. Just throw 4 for Marspot, 3 and 1, and 4 for you, and buy what you want. Marspot never pays for cards. And then comes the actions phase, and you just play your turn exactly like in the game with 3 exceptions. Anything that says remove or steal resources, you only take mega credits because that's the only resource Marspot will have. If it says decrease the production, you will decrease the production on the corresponding track. And if you check here, every track has a production and tags, and that basically matches the tags or production to that track for the rest of the game. So you'll just move it 1 step down. I'll get into the tracks more when I explain Marspot's turn. So other than that, you just take your turn normally. Here it also describes which resource corresponds to each track, even though you can see it on the track. Marspot does not reactivate bonuses on the track after you decrease it, and if you have to count anything like number of tags or number of production, same thing. See which step on the track you're on that matches that tag or production. And that's it. Now Marspot's turn. This one's a little more complicated, but it's actually pretty simple. Basically, you're gonna draw one of its 4 random cards. It's only gonna take 1 action per turn, and you just draw a card, flip it over, and if it's a product card, all you care about is the tags. And you're basically gonna advance the corresponding track to that tag from left to right, and take whatever action you land on that track, if you land on any action. Now, if you can take the action, or if it's maxed out, or if the card has no tags, Marspot takes a fail action, which is just getting 5 mega credits. And then you put it in the plate pile. If it's a bonus card, then you're going to resolve the effect. If you can't resolve the effect, you also do a fail action, which is 5 MC. And if it has more than 1 option, then you just go top to bottom. Once it plays all 4 cards, it passes, so Marspot is going to have 4 turns every round. Now let's look at the track. So this is a Tharsis one, and as you can see, for example, on the green, micropanel plant text, you see you got 1 step, 2 step, the 3rd step it will place a greenery, then nothing, then greenery, greenery, then advance. I'll describe what each icon is, but because it describes it below, but basically the actions are placing tiles, greenery, cities, oceans, increasing the temperature track, claiming milestones on awards, skipping a step. This one gives floaters too, and there's also getting terraforming rating. It's not just one, it's the number that it says here. I don't know if you can see it, but there's a lot of high numbers in the last track. It gets a bunch of terraforming points when it gets to the last track, but that's how it takes its actions. It's just the tags make it take the action wherever it lands on the track. So it's pretty simple to play, really. Here's what each bonus card is, and there's 3 things that you care about here. Expansion symbol, only played with those expansions. Then there's an effect, and here it gives you a bunch of options. It raises Venus is its even number. You just follow this text, and then it has a final beginning of round action, which is, I think, either shuffle it into the action deck so it doesn't go into the discard pile, you just get to play it again, or it can destroy it, and when it destroys it, it's out for the rest of the game. Then I talked about fail actions. Basically, it's whenever it tries to take an action and it can't, like, no tags, or the action is claiming a milestone, but it has no way to claim that milestone. You can read the full list here, but it's pretty intuitive. Then they have a description of all the cards. I'm only gonna talk about once, which is the neural instance, which gives it a bunch of points. You just place it on the board, and there's placement rules, but any adjacent tile where Marspot has another tile or it's empty, it gets a point. So the maximum is 6. Then here it describes all of the possible actions on the track. So if you run into an arrow, you just go to the next step, and that accelerates the tracks. It can advance another track, gain terraforming rating, claim milestone, found award. There are rules which are pretty much trying to make the best play possible for this, which is, for example, if you're claiming a milestone, claim the one where you also meet the criteria for first, or the closest one, and then it just goes from left to right, which is basically random. And the award is the same thing. So it puts rules that tries to make it play in the most sensible way, and this is something where you can just use your intuition and just do what you would do in its position. The milestones and awards are pretty similar. Because it has no tags, it just uses the space 8 on the building track instead, and which is the same as 8 tags, but events count, which don't exist. And then for planner, 4 space on every track, which I'm guessing it's pretty hard, but it's yeah. And then the awards are also very similar. Landlord is the same. Banker, just add these 2 tracks. Scientist, the science track. Thermalist, the Jovian energy track +5, and Miner space track +5. So those change a bit. The other actions: raise temperature, place greenery, place ocean, place city. There are placement rules for all of them, and it's all, pretty much what you would probably guess is the best spot on the map. And so I would recommend just use your intuition. You don't have to memorize all this. Just do what you would do when you're placing a tile for Marspot, and it's probably going to be the same. But it does have the rules here. And finally, the end game. So it's pretty similar. You both do the greeneries. You do yours normally. Marspot is going to place 1 whenever one of its tracks is right before a greenery action, which I think is a smart way to handle that. And then there are some rules. You have to finish before the 20th generation, which should be easy, although I'm gonna go for 19 probably. The only exceptions to scoring, you score terraforming rating, ground game, and milestones and awards the same, as long as you use Marspot criteria on milestones and awards. But Marspot does not score victory points on cards. Instead, it gets 1 victory point for the neural instance, which is almost guaranteed to come into play because there's only 8 cards in the base game. But it also gets, you convert all its money into points according to this table. So you should be able to finish the game in 12 rounds, so I'm guessing 8 MC per point is going to be the norm. But, you know, to make it fun, you should try at least once to not terraform and see what you can beat it on 19 rounds. At which point it gets an insane amount of victory points. Because the thing is, Marsbot, maybe it doesn't have many ways to gain mega credits. It's like oceans, maybe a few cards, and all the failed actions. But there aren't that many ways to take mega credits from it, and it pays money for almost nothing throughout the game. So it's gonna have some money at the end. Easily, I think 30 is not crazy to think. And especially if you max one of the tracks early, then it's gonna take a bunch of failed actions, and because the game is long, that can happen. And then it's gonna be like, if you want to play 19 rounds, make sure those tracks don't max out much earlier than the other ones. And that's it. You just have to outscore it. A tie is a win by Marsbot. Obviously, you can't do the tiebreaker with mega credits, and that's pretty much it. So it's just to sum it up, use the tags on the cards to advance the tracks define the actions, and the bonus cards define the special actions. Okay, now let's talk about playing with corporations. So there are 46 Marsbot corporation cards, but the corporation is pretty simple. So you have a name, you have a tag. You're going to advance this track as soon as you play the corporation card. And then it has a setup action, which you're going to do immediately. So this one places plants here. Then you have an effect. So when resolving a plant micro animal tag, place a plant. So this is basically viral enhancers. Except it only puts plants here. And then before the action phase, if you have 5 or more plants, remove the plants and advance plant track. So basically, Ecotech just has, and it's gonna go much faster on the plant track because every track advances 1/5 or 20% more. Every plant, animal, and micro track advances the track 20% more because every 5 you get an additional one. Now, 2 key things here. It also comes with a draft priority, and this is the part where I think it's much. This is where I think playing with a draft might be viable. I really wouldn't do it without the corporations, but with here, at least Marsbot has some advantage. You still get a knowledge of his hand, but basically it just tells you, if there's a plant tag, just take that. If there isn't a plant tag, take a microbe. If there isn't a microbe, take an animal, and if not, just pick at random. If you have 2 plant tags, then you take the one with most tags, and if one of them is in your draft priority, then you take that one. So if you have a plant and then a plant and a building, you take the plant and a building. If you have a plant and a building and another with a plant and a microbe, you take the one with a plant and a microbe. But for example, if you have one with just a plant and one with a microbe and an animal, you would take the one with the plant. So the plant is always the first priority. Even though for this card that's actually worst, because these tags are basically the same. Throughout the game, I think they're all on the same track, and that would give 2 plants instead of 1, but yeah, you just go by each tag and then go down. Besides the draft priority, that's pretty much it for the corporation. Just resolve its effects, the before action phase, and the setup. And the tag counts as a tag, and that's pretty much it. Now, the cool thing is that there are some exceptions, and for example, here it says for Ecoline and Ecotech, you can actually destroy plants or steal plants from your opponent from the resources it has. So it's a you can still destroy the money, but you can also take the plants instead. And I would assume, I don't want to spoil all the corporations for me, but I would assume it's all similar for these ones. So that's it for the corporations. They're pretty easy to add. The game recommends not to do it on the first go, but you can, the game also recommended not to play with the corporate era cards the first time, and it also recommended to use a beginner corp the first time. I'm probably gonna play with the corporations card for the first time. It's not too complicated. Okay, finally let's talk about the expansions. So Prelude and Venus are actually pretty easy. The other ones are a bit more complicated. When you do Prelude, the main thing is that instead of getting Prelude cards, Marspot gets 3 extra project cards, and he just flips those tags and advances those tiles and takes those actions. And then for the wild resource, you just advance the furthest one. And for the final scoring, it basically goes down by 2 generations and everything else is the same. So instead of 10 it's 12 and you lose on 18 instead of 20. And that's it for Prelude. It's just 3 extra cards and a few changes. For Venus, it's also pretty simple. You use the Venus track that I showed at the beginning of the video, which is just pretty much the same. But then you can get floater resources, and there are many ways to get them on the tracks. And the way the floater resources work, if you have 7 at the beginning of the turn, you claim Overlord, and if it's unclaimed. Otherwise, if you have at least 5, it's gonna spend them to keep either its 4th drafted card or an extra card that you just draw if you're not drafting. And that's pretty much it. There are extra actions that give you Venus steps and floaters, obviously, but that's pretty much it. You just use floaters for drawing cards or claiming Overlords. Now with each expansion, you're gonna see that they're gonna replace some of the bonus cards with other bonus cards or simply add bonus cards. But I'm not gonna get into each bonus card right now. So let's get into Colonies, and this is a really difficult one. So with Colonies, you're gonna use your colony board, which basically has a storage base for resources for each of the 11 colonies. The same rules apply for floaters. If Overlord is in play, you claim it, otherwise you spend 5 to draw an extra card. And then among the bonus action cards you add, you're gonna add the Expedited Construction cards, and you're gonna shuffle every turn the shipping lines into its deck, so it's gonna have a 5th action. But it's also, if it has 2 trade fleets, they're gonna be extending shipping lines, which it's just another action. So it'll have 1 or 2 trade actions every turn, in addition to its regular 4th actions. Now the way colonies and trading works is placing a colony gives it 2 resources on that colony storage space. Trading gives it 2 resources on that colony storage space. And colony bonus is 1 resource on that colony storage place. And then you can use 5 resources to advance the track corresponding to that colony. So for example, if you place a colony on Ganymede, you get 2 resources. Then if you trade with it, you'll get 2 for the trade, 1 for the bonus, so you have total 5 resources on the Ganymede storage space, and then you can use those 5 resources to advance the planned track. Now the other important thing is that Miranda, Enceladus, and Triton all start with the marker in play. And when deciding which one to trade with, it's going to trade with the highest one, and if it's a tie, with the one that has a colony among those, otherwise it just does at random. Oh, and trading costs 1 mega credit. So I think that kind of covers it all. The last thing to cover is that Europa is a little different. Europa, the colony bonus is still an ocean, and instead of 2 resources you get 1 TR step, and for the colony bonus you get 1 MC, and that's pretty much it. For the second trade fleet, the way it gets it is in the 9th spot of the energy track. So that's it. When it reaches that, you get the second trade fleet and you use the second shipping lines card. Finally, for Turmoil. Turmoil is also complicated but a little simpler, and basically Marspot won't interact with either the policies or the bonuses. It just cares about the victory points that you get from the chairman. Marspot TR is 10, yours is going to be 20 to start with, and you're going to shuffle the party politics card, which is basically going to place a delegate. It just tells you the priority, so it's going to try to take a dominant party and a party leader. So it's just, Marspot is just going to try to become chairman, so it gets an extra TR per turn. And then you're going to flip a card, and if it's the card cost is divisible by 3, Marspot is gonna spend 5 MC and place another delegate. So it basically has 1 free delegate and 1 in 3 chances to place a second one for 5 MC. Which is pretty, it's a creative way to do it. Finally, in the Turmoil step, this basically all just happens to you, except Marspot doesn't lose the TR, and it gets the TR when it becomes chairman. The global effects only happen to you, the policy only happens to you, the bonus only happens to you. And then at the end of the game, everyone gets, same as the base game, 1 VP per party leader and chairman. And that's it. So pretty much you interact with Turmoil the same. Marspot just cares about the TR it gains from being chairman. And yeah, finally Hellas and Elysium, it's just a different board, and it explains all the well, and for the new maps too, all the milestones and awards, but I'm not gonna get into that. So in conclusion, I am gonna buy this. I think it's interesting enough for me to buy. I hope the video helps you make a decision as to whether you would like this. I definitely think it's more interesting than the original solo version, because the solo version you're just terraforming, right? And you're ignoring like half the deck and half the rules. Here you get to interact with all the victory point cards, cities, for example, milestones, awards, all the other ways to get victory points that are terraforming rating, which are all the fun ones in my opinion. And then also all these expansions, you can interact better with them because you get to interact with the colonies that are terraform, and you get to put the parties that are good for terraforming into play with Turmoil, and you get to use Venus, which it's otherwise kind of pointless to do. So yeah, I think I don't think I'm gonna play it a bunch of times, but I think the added price is worth it. And like I said, I hope this explanation helps you make your decision. And well, that's it. See you next time.